Hello everyone and welcome to TechnyFire, the place where we ignite innovation and explore the technology that shapes our world. I am your host, Dapo Aruwajoye. This week, we're tackling a question that's on everyone's mind. What does the future of work look like in the age of AI? It's not just about new gadgets. It's about a fundamental shift in how we work, learn, and create value. We will explore how we can actively shape this future, not just react to it. Our guide for this conversation is a true leader in the field of artificial intelligence. He is the founder and CEO of a US-based AI company. He has a remarkable career that includes leading a 300-person engineering team at JP Morgan Chase and spearheading major tech initiatives at MoneyGram and Thomson Reuters. He brings decades of experience from the front lines of enterprise innovation. But before then, let's quickly get updates on happenings in the tech world on Tech News on Fire.
Nigerian startup Max has secured $24 million to expand its electric vehicle fleet and battery swapping infrastructure, aiming to support 250,000 drivers by 2027. Paystack has launched the Stack Group TSG as a parent company for its tech businesses in Africa, enhancing regulatory management and innovation following its acquisition of Ladder Microfinance Bank. Israel has launched its AI supercomputer, utilizing 1,000 NVIDIA B200 accelerators to provide discounted access for high-tech firms and academic researchers. This initiative aims to enhance Israel's R&D infrastructure in AI. Elon Musk announced Tesla will restart its Dojo supercomputer project to process data for full self-driving software. With the AI-5 chip design progressing, Musk believes the project can now advance, though experts remain skeptical about its feasibility. Canada has reduced tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles from 100% to 6.1%. This change benefits Tesla, allowing for the import of up to 49,000 vehicles annually, with potential growth in the future.
Welcome back. Now to our discussion on AI and the future of work. We have Adah Ojile. He is the founder and CEO of Agentous, a US-based AI company and a technology leader with decades of experience in global enterprise innovation. In 2006, he pioneered large-scale context indexing by scraping Wikipedia, anticipating the foundations of modern large language models. His Harvard graduate research applied neural networks to genomic data for melanoma subtype prediction. An aeronautical engineering graduate from the U.S. Air Force Academy and an honoree of the National Honor Society for Aerospace Engineers. He also holds graduate degrees from Cornell and Harvard. So let's get to meet Adah. Welcome. To help us understand the intricacies of artificial intelligence and the future of work, we have a leading voice in the AI industry. He's the founder of Agentous, leading AI industry in the United States. Is Adah Ojile. Good to have you, Adah. Thank you very much, Adah, for joining us.
Thank you, Dapo. Thank you for having me on TechnyFire.
All right. To know you better, can you tell us about yourself and how did you get into the tech industry?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, I will say that most technologists or inventors are dreamers, first and foremost. And certainly growing up as a kid watching the Star Wars and Star Trek and, you know, other sci-fi movies, which I was a big fan of, it just sort of enables you to dream about what the possibilities are. And if there's any such thing as magic, if there ever was one, it would be engineering. And so that's what got me into technology.
So you were trained as an aeronautical engineer at the U.S. Air Force Academy. Can you tell us how do you relate the structured thinking of an engineer to the easy flow of an AI personnel?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some of the most complex engineering you can do is actually is aeronautical engineering and aerospace engineering, right? Being a member of the National Aeronautical and Aerospace Honor Society, I mean, of course, the kind of problems you solve are very complex. So systems thinking actually translates also to AI and software engineering in general. And of course, today you see a lot of folks who are in the technology space being very fascinated with space travel, whether it's SpaceX or Blue Origin, right? So it's not unknown to know AI and technologists who are very fascinated with space and aerospace and things like that.
So you were truly ahead of time. In 2006, you were scraping content on Wikipedia, trying to set up then the LLMs. Were you thinking of the future then?
Yeah. So I mean, I've always thought that the last invention would be the invention of the human mind, right? Because once you've done that, then everything else scales, right? So my thought has always been, how do I create my own mind, right? How do I replicate that? And of course, one of the areas that you get knowledge are through encyclopedias. And prior to 2005, 2006, you had the Encyclopedia Britannica, but most of these were published, right? And very quickly, when Wikipedia was founded, it became that source of knowledge and it grew pretty fast. And so finally, there was a point where you could say, yes, you can go to one source online, scrape meaning from that source, turn those into matrices, and arrays, and then start to build the foundations of AI. So around 2006, Google as well, and my company at the time were one of those early players that went into, started scraping Wikipedia to start running context-based algorithms and testing out these various models.
Research at Harvard, applying neural networks to genomic data. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so practically any sort of technology problem, or complex problem can be solved with AI. Like if you start to reduce complex problems to numbers, and you have a lot of good data, you can actually be highly predictive. Right, and so in that research, it had to do with looking at genomic data in order to predict various kinds of melanoma subtypes, right? And that was at the Harvard Medical School, right? So whether it's aeronautical engineering or whether it's research at the medical school or any other sort of environment, the fact is that these are all systems and they all form patterns. And if you have enough data, you can be highly predictive.
So apparently, you took all these experiences into leading companies, world-leading companies, like JP Morgan and Reuters. Tell us about the AI, your contributions towards AI in this company.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you think about AI, of course, humans, we have to sleep, we have to eat, we have to take breaks. There's only so much data we can process. And credit risk scoring or credit risk analysis is a huge part of what banks do. Right, and so in my role at JP Morgan, had about a $50 million budget and hundreds of engineers. It was looking to improve, especially with these new machine learning methods, improve on how credit risk analysis is done, basically accelerate that. So maybe a decision that would be made in 30 days, you're able to make that decision in 3 days, and then eventually in 3 minutes, right? And so that was one of the key things we did around that, was looking at ways to speed up credit risk decisioning.
After a distinguished corporate career, you decided to found your own personal company, which is an AI company. What led to that?
Well, yes, as you know, it's been 20 years sort of working through this, and people who know really complex scientific research and efforts know that it takes decades to actually get to a certain point. There needed to be a convergence around compute, right? The issue back in 2006 was not so much that the algorithms weren't properly understood, or even though they matured quite a bit. The issue is lack of compute. Remember, 2006 was when Amazon Web Services really was launched, right? So you barely had cloud 20 years ago, right? NVIDIA, of course, is highly valued today in the marketplace. But the way they got there was creating general purpose GPUs, like for compute. Right, so that convergence has finally happened, and you have billions of dollars also converging in that space. You have large language models effectively becoming AI utilities, and eventually even further down the line being commoditized. This is the time to start an AI company to sit on top of all that fascinating infrastructure that's been built over the last 20 years.
So what's the core mission of Agentous, and what problem are you solving now?
So at Agentous, we're creating a digital workforce. All right. If there's any work that's done today in the office where a human looks at a screen, goes into a business system, works in that business system, looks at another screen, works in another business system in order to do their job from A to B, AI systems will thrive in that space, right? So Agentous was built to build these digital AI agents. And the goal of all this is to move people from these sort of mindless, in many cases, bureaucratic work, whether it's in corporate America or in government, and then to enable them to then spend more time on more high-minded sort of decision making. Some examples, right? So financial services firms are clients, right, of ours, and so one of the key areas here is underwriting, right? So when you submit an application as a small business to get a cash advance, right? The process of underwriting that takes, it can take a few hours, in some cases even a few days, right? With AI systems, as long as all the submissions are correct, you can actually make very quick decisioning. And in fact, even the interaction of getting more complete submissions, emailing back and forth with the business in order to get all the documents and then making that decision is something that AI systems can do. So we're building AI agents that do underwriting, but we're also building AI agents that do collections. So when the payments are not made, typically you call the person, you email the person, you text the person or the business, and you're trying to collect, right? All of that work can also be done by AI agents today with the large language models that exist. They can read messages, they can understand sort of sentiments, they can respond with the right tone. All of that is possible. And we'll continue to build AI agents in other areas, sales operations, marketing operations, right? Anything that involves HR operations as well.
Okay, is it that you just work with financial services firms in the United States? Or what are you doing in Nigeria?
Well, I mean, my background at JP Morgan, where I led credit risk tech transformation, puts me in having spent many years in New York City, which is a huge financial services hub globally. Really drew us to that first set of use cases. This is also the area where it's like most complex, right? It's really, complex to solve, the underwriting problem or to solve the collections problem, right? And so focusing in that services area meant that we were going to be solving complex problems. Once we address those there, it becomes easier to pivot into other areas like, logistics or retail, or human resource tech, etc.
It's nice that we've talked about the past, the present, and now let's talk about the future. Let's zoom in now. What will the future of work look like in the age of AI?
Yeah, work in the age of AI is human and machine, right? Today, and let's start with areas where are more obvious, like office work, right? So a person with AI, as you hear this once in a while, quite often, a person with AI is going to outcompete a person who's working without AI. So that's going to be a critical aspect of things. So people have to upskill and to realize that, look, if they have tough decisions to make, or if they have analysis that has to be made, they should be turning to these large language models to help them with that. If you're a software engineer and you're not using AI to help you debug, you're going to be operating and delivering slower, right? So there's that aspect. Now, as AI systems get smarter and smarter, they'll be replacing even some of these other issues and these other technology concerns or business concerns. And so it's important for people to constantly upskill into the areas where humans are especially needed. Of course, sales, like an interaction in sales is something very important that has to happen in person, right? In education, people, at least to a certain extent, want teachers. Medicine, that's going to always, whether it's as a nurse or a doctor, those are areas that are always going to be high demand. And in that future, you now have, like in Nigeria, where we are right now, 4 doctors address 10,000 patients. 4 doctors. That ratio is the reason why people don't get the healthcare they need. In that future world, you have a lot of that mitigated because AI agents and AI systems are in place to enable that doctor to scale and to see a lot more patients. So a lot of that change, it really means human and machines working collaboratively to scale and address more of these technology and business concerns.
Over the few years, developed economies will be dealing with AI agents. So what do you think, or where do you place Africa then?
Yeah, so it's very important to realize that where Africa should be right now is actually building those solutions for the Western world. And this is the point I'd like to make. A person who went to University of Ibadan and studied computer science with maybe 2 years or not that much experience now can actually now go to Claude, right? Anthropic's Claude, or to go to OpenAI's ChatGPT and learn very quickly, right? They can pick up tools, and our vibe coding is available. So a person now can actually do the kind of work that required many, many, many more years of training. Instead of trying to figure out how to consume AI, the question is how in this region, now that these tools are available and a great equalizer, can you have technologists and engineers and tech enthusiasts using these tools to actually start to export services to the rest of the world? So it's actually a big boon to the African economy.
And that brings us to a major concern. People think AI will take their jobs. Is that a misconception, or is that a reality we need to just buckle up with?
Some jobs will be taken away by AI. It's important to be very important about that. If the job you do is boring and it's repetitive and it's not interesting, AI systems will take that away, right? And we've seen that in other technologies that have actually come to the fore, right? I mean, people used to have secretaries, but now everybody has, a desktop, right, with word processing applications, etc. Right? So some jobs will go away. But what will happen is this will then provide opportunities for other areas, right? The advent of robotics with AI, that combination, is something that we can also find as a huge potential boom for the economy, whereby today a lot of the land in Africa is arable, but doesn't get farmed, right? Why? Because there's just not enough equipment. You can have to start to envisage a world where you have robots, tractors are automated that actually farm lots of land. Street cleaning that starts to happen using these sort of robots. And initially they're going to be not affordable, but as you go through a few years, just like with iPhones and other smartphones, you start to get them in this market, right? So imagine 10 years, 15 years from now, you'll start having robots in Africa doing things that maybe not brand new initially, but eventually those will start to become available in the market. So it's a huge opportunity for the region.
From your own experience, what common mistakes do you see companies making when they want to adopt AI?
Yeah, I think they underestimate how difficult it is to go from a consumer use case of using AI to an enterprise use case of using AI. It's one thing to go to ChatGPT and ask it a question and it gives you a response. It's quite another to actually have your software teams integrate with business systems and then try to leverage large language models. The fact is today, out of the box, some of these large language models hallucinate. So if you think you can just out of the box just leverage their APIs, integrate with some other business system and have it work, that's not going to happen. So there's a lot of engineering that goes in to make sure you build sort of modules that prevent hallucination, that you build services that make integrations with these large language models a lot more resilient.
Talking of hallucination that you just mentioned, how do you address that?
So the problem of hallucination is actually not one that you can't engineer out of. The reality is actually to have systems that don't hallucinate, you need about 20 times the amount of compute, right? And we're using a lot of electricity already for what we have. Now, what you do, however, is you have to build your own layer outside of the large language models, right? So when you're given numbers, right, which the hallucination problems come into play, you build your own systems outside of that capture those numbers, right? So think of it like large language models having short-term memory and limited context, right? Now, you and I have short-term memory problems, which is why sometimes we write down notes. That prevents us from hallucinating the amount of money we need to pay someone, right? Because we've written it down. And then when we need to remember it, we reference it, right? And then respond, right? So those are the ways in which you can address that. Out of the box, there are no solutions coming out of the large language models, but you need to build your own systems to address that.
In preparation for an AI-driven future, talking about education, what do you think the schools should be looking at?
Yeah, so you hear people sometimes try to prevent students from getting access to AI to do work. I think that's a bit of a mistake. You do want to teach people foundationally how to think, obviously, because that's a core aspect of it. But AI becomes that tool that allows you to learn faster. To the curious student who wants to learn the foundations of science and engineering, they can learn it. But that curious student that wants to invent and innovate on top of that and build in ways that scale, using AI actually enables them to do that. Now, in an environment like this, what that means is that certainly for university students that have the capacity and capability, we need to find ways to give them grants, or even those who want to start businesses around this, loans, so that they can pay for these AI, some of these packages, right? So yeah, primary education, what does that mean? That means we need to start introducing the opportunities for leveraging AI to learn early on. Now, it also means that education will actually scale. So in instances where one teacher had to basically teach maybe 50 or 60 students, in that later world, project 15 years, you may actually have systems, intelligence systems, that are available to help educate.
So what roles do you think the government and even organizations should play in upskilling and reskilling of their workers?
Yes. So one example I give, you hear quite a bit about Nigeria wanted to double the amount of barrels, from 1.5 million barrels to like 3 million barrels a year, right? That sort of thing, right? Well, if you invest $1, and there's some data around this, IMF data, and et cetera. If you invest $1, right, in oil and gas to get more output, right, maybe you'll get back $2 in 5 to 10 years, right? If you invest in AI $1, you're going to get something like 15 to 20, right? So governments need, as much as they have these programs around, like in a country like this that's like mineral resource rich, around having, doubling output, we have to realize that oil is further down in the value chain. The highest in the value chain today is AI. This is the reason why 7 companies have huge market cap, right? So the best thing a government can do right now is invest in its people, either give them grants or give them loans or whatever you need to do to enable them to compete in this AI market space. In the private sector, it also comes down to using AI as a tool, whether it's AI agents, et cetera, to make you more efficient so that you can compete globally, right, for market.
So what kind of productivity gaps do you think AI agents will close in Africa?
Yes. Productivity gaps. Let's give a perfect. Of course, government is going to be the latest adopter of this. But if it takes you, 30 days to get a license, you should be able to get that license in 3 days, right? And you can use AI to do that. Businesses, if it's difficult for them to compete, right? Because they just don't have enough engineers and they don't have enough capital, and that's one of the issues in Africa is just lower capital per, dollars or what they call per individual. They can use AI now to actually scale in order to compete, right? So those are huge opportunities.
Fantastic. So if you could wave a magic wand today and change something about the way we are approaching AI, what would that be?
I would say it would be to wake up and realize that this is a once-in-a-century civilizational change. And this is not an understatement. And it's hard for people when they're living in the process of the change to actually see it. But this is a once-in-a-century civilizational change. The closest to this would be electricity in the 1910s and 1920s, right? That's how big it is, right? And governments can actually either do the things that are necessary to leverage AI as the great equalizer, or not do it and be left even further behind. Right, so if I could wave a magic wand, it would be to wake people up in this region to realize that literally something has been dropped on their tables to be able to catch up with the rest of the world in many areas, especially in technology.
So what advice would you give Africans building deep tech companies today?
With the money invested in there, frankly, AI is going to become, I call it an intelligence utility, right? So it's going to be commoditized, the cost is going to go down. I would say to start to think about the tools they can build on top of this new platform. Think of the iPhone, for instance, or smartphones as a new platform, right? You couldn't have had Facebook boom the way it did, or Instagram boom the way it did without smartphones, right? Right. So some of these companies actually will start to get formed on top of these AI utilities that exist today. So I would say start to think more about what that means. What does it mean now that if you have electricity, right? Now you can have refrigeration. Now you can have televisions, right? Which could not have existed as products prior to electricity. Yeah. Same thing with AI.
Looking ahead, 5 or 10 years, what's your optimistic prediction for the future of work?
The most optimistic prediction for the future of work is that productivity levels will increase significantly. Over the next 7 years, probably a few trillions of dollars, especially when AGI, artificial general intelligence, gets introduced. And what that means is companies become more profitable. They're able to then reinvest in other sectors of the economy.
Talking about your company, Agentous, where do you find yourself? What mark do you think you'll be making in the next 5 years?
Today, most companies, 90% or 100% of their employees are human, right? In the future, right? And by the way, our AI agents have names, they have personalities, right? Which is and eventually they'll have avatars. You'll be able to jump on a Zoom call and actually have a conversation with your AI agent the same way we're having conversations right now, right? So half of employees, half of workforces, 50% will be agentic, right? 50% of companies will be agentic. And our role is to be the dominant player in creating that agentic economy.
Finally, a message for TechnyFire. What do you think?
Yeah, so for TechnyFire, I would say one day, Dapo, you'll be able to take all your content, right? And AI will create an avatar that looks exactly like you with your mannerisms, and you'll be out somewhere in the Bahamas sipping on your favorite martini while your avatar AI agent Dapo is doing this interview today.
Right. Thank you so much, Adah Ojile,
Thank you
for sharing your time with us on TechnyFire.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now we're turning the microphone over to you, our listeners. Your feedback is what fuels this conversation. First, let's hear what some of you had to say about our last burning question. Fantastic points there. Now, for today's burning question, we want to build on our discussion. What skills do you think are most essential for thriving in the future workforce alongside AI? Is it creativity, emotional intelligence, technical proficiency? We want to hear from your take. Send us your thoughts via these platforms showing on the screen. And that's a wrap for this episode of TechnyFire. Our conversation today made one thing clear. The future of work isn't something that just happens to us. It's a future we can actively build, and it starts with curiosity, adaptability, and collaboration. Until next time, keep the tech spark alive. I am Dapo Aruwajoye, the TechnyFire, signing off on TechnyFire.